to our student spotlight session. And welcome to the Gender Justice Conference. My name is Tess Benzer, and I will be the facilitator for today's session. We joined today's conference with the intent to explore the knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to engage in social change work with a special focus on disrupting gender oppression. So thank you so much for being here with us. You are currently in the student spotlight session titled Becoming Yourself in a PWI and Beyond. Just as a note, we will be recording this session. We are in a regular Zoom, which means that both your video and name will be visible during this session. We invite you to change your Zoom name and turn off your video to promote anonymity if needed. In addition, please note that we have an ASL interpreter as well as live captioning available during the session. I invite you at this time to use the rename function on Zoom to include your pronouns next to your name. In addition, Dr. Cindy Alcidonis will be our Zoom moderator for the beginning of the session, and we will transition to Lindsay Mosbick at the end of the session. They will be monitoring the chat. If you have any questions about technology or how to access live captioning, please use the chat feature and we will do our best to answer your questions. In addition, they will be helping to ensure that all of us are upholding our community agreement, which can be found in our conference support hub. If at any time you are in violation of our community agreement, you may be asked to leave. During our session, we're committed to supporting the healing journey of our audience members and the members of our community. We understand that the content of today's session may have the potential to be triggering or activating for some of our audience members, as we will be covering topics of predominantly white institutions, which may include conversations around racism, racist violence or harm, examples of white supremacist violence, and police and/or state violence or harm. In light of this, we encourage our audience to take care of themselves during the presentation by taking a break, stepping away, and/or turning off their camera at any point. Now I have the honor of introducing our presenter for today's session. We are joined here today by Najah Hendricks. Najah, who uses she, her pronouns, is a senior majoring in social work. She is currently the founder of a Voice at the Table diversity column and a student activist on and off campus. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn our session over to our presenter. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to my session today. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And is that visible to everyone? Yes. Okay. So thank you for coming again. So yes, this is Becoming You at PWI and Beyond. So I'll be talking about being a student activist at a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution. The experiences that you go through and the challenges that we face and, the work that we put in that, I want to recognize today. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid. Those powerful words by the great Audre Lorde have guided me through my experience at Westchester University and helped me grow into my own person. Standing up and speaking for what's right isn't always easy for everyone. In my experience, I used to never want to be in the spotlight. And at PWI, it may seem as it's impossible to speak on social justice, racism, homophobia, transphobia, and other important issues that we need to raise awareness on. But as the quote says, if your vision and passion is powerful enough, it doesn't matter where you are, it's enough to make a difference. Whatever movement, organization, story, or own personal experience that inspired you to get involved and become an advocate and activist is important. For me, I started A Voice at the Table, a diversity column that's featured in the quad a few years ago, because I was tired of having to walk into a classroom and pretend that a racial killing, arrest, or a white supremacy group wasn't outside of our front lawn and pretend that everything was fine. Or have to censor how I feel as a Black person in general going to a PWI where there aren't a lot of spaces where you can just be you unapologetically. I figured there were other students from other backgrounds dealing with their oppression that felt the same way. It started out as a small monthly journal article, but then soon created stepping stones for change at Westchester. Starting with our town hall hosted with public safety and Westchester the Police Department, and continuing to cover several social justice issues here at Westchester. If you have that same experience or feeling that I had, go with it and speak up until you're heard. Whatever it is you're advocating for, it matters. There are others that will join you, even if they don't have the same ideas or vision as you still need the support. Because when you're coming raising awareness on an issue, be prepared for your thoughts and feelings to change as you get a bigger perspective and you meet other people, especially at a college and beyond in your life. Everyone has their own story that deserves to be heard. Going into this activist role, it's important to know that you can't speak up for every group. Yes, you can help advocate, raise awareness, and educate yourself, but more importantly, help them find their voice. I can't speak on what it feels like to be a Black woman who is transgender, but I can tell you why they deserve protective rights. I can't speak on how it feels to not be able to find a bathroom that you feel safe using, but I can help fight for more gender neutral bathrooms and so on. I also learned that however small you think your voice is, it's leading to a major impact that you probably didn't know has much effect on people. I also learned to take advantage of every opportunity that needs more advocacy, whether you're the voice speaking up or you're just simply helping. During this journey, I adopted myself many times, asking, is what I say really going to matter? Am I going to make a difference? And many more intrusive thoughts. Many of us have encountered imposter syndrome in our lives. It's normal. At times, we aren't the best, we aren't the most positive about ourselves. But you have to give yourself the same fight that you give others and know who you are. If you know what's in your heart and why you're advocating, don't stop speaking up for yourself. Don't give in and make yourself small, and don't allow others to make you feel small. We hit our lows and highs, and sometimes we hit a lot of lows that make us feel like we're not doing enough, what we say doesn't matter, or that we failed. But the only way you can fail and give in to imposter syndrome is if you let self doubt get in your way. Don't let negative thoughts take up rent in your head. Going along with that, it's easy to feel out of place being at PWI where there might not be as many people that can relate to you. Some of these institutions weren't built with you in mind, but that shouldn't stop you from obtaining your purpose and occupying that space unapologetically. It can be uncomfortable at times, but with change and growth doesn't come comfort. In history that we saw that making a difference isn't easy, and it also doesn't happen in a day. When you walk in a room, hold your head up high and make your presence known and felt. You deserve to be here just as much as anyone else. So, just going along with everything that was said so far, as you can see, when you go into this activist role, trying to spread advocacy and stuff, yes, it is important, and that's something we should be doing on a daily basis. But it can take a toll on your mental health, especially once, as we've seen from the past summer and the past year, current events like mass shootings, protests, arrests that seem to happen almost every day along with the pandemic. It can really drain you and you start to question everything about yourself. I want to express that it's important that you don't have to feel pressure to speak on everything. If you need time to yourself, if you need to take a break from the trauma and everything, if there's anything that's triggering you, It's important to take care of yourself first, because as I always say, you can't water a plant if your pot is empty. So you can't spread awareness, you can't speak up or continue doing what's important for you if you don't have anything left for you. Because not only you're fighting for everyone else, you're also fighting for yourself. So you need to build your own mental health and make sure that's put first. And also realize there's always a community behind you. If you feel like you can't do it by yourself, knowing that you have other people behind you who will help you and speak up with you, and also you have those people there to really vent to, if everything's like too much, if social media, you keep seeing like all these events and stuff, there's other people who are there that will help understand. And also don't give in to that pressure that if you're not posting, if you're not tweeting or anything that the social media says nowadays, that you're not doing enough, or you're not doing anything at all. Advocating and protesting and stuff, it goes far beyond social media. Because back in the day, we didn't always have cameras or posting to tell people what our daily news are. And you really shouldn't be doing it just for everyone, just to be seen by everyone. It should be done because that's what you want to do. That's what you're fighting for. So always remember that, you're doing more than enough. This is hard work. And especially as students, we're in college. So we have our own personal lives. We have our families to worry about. And we have like exams and midterms and stuff and graduate school and our futures. So just know that you're already taking on a lot, besides being a full-time student and working. So I started with a quote, so I'm going to end with a quote. This is by Angela Davis. It is important not only to have the awareness and to feel impelled to become involved, it's important that there be a forum out there to which one can relate to, an organization, a movement. Thank you so much, for coming to this session and listening to me speak. If there's like any comments or questions, I want to leave room for that as well.
Great. So I would like to invite folks, if you have questions, comments, things that you'd like to do to engage, that you can put them in the chat. If you'd like, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and share your screen if you feel comfortable. But absolutely feel free to engage with our presenter. I think that, I will definitely say that this was a wonderful and impactful session so far. I have a question of my own, if that's okay, to kind of kick us off. So Najah, I appreciated so much the sort of emphasis on self-care and not always like feeling that pressure to constantly be the one who's showing up. I was curious if for folks in the room, you could share any of your own strategies about how that has looked for you, what has worked for you. Yeah, I was just curious if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely for me, it used to be so hard to like do like self-care and like, really put that first because you're always constantly thinking with like what you could be doing like of other people and stuff. But I just had to force myself to do it. Sometimes I just turn off my phone because that's a big one. That's you get all those notifications daily and it will drive you crazy. So I literally just turn off my phone, put on do not disturb, and I try to go outside a lot. I love like a lot of fresh air and stuff. But yeah, that's my biggest thing is the phone. So I try not every time I wake up, I try not let that be the first thing I look at or the last thing I look at. So that's really the biggest thing because like, you go on social media and hear all these posts and like people's opinions and stuff. It can like for me, it was taking a toll, like seeing that every day. So that was like my biggest thing for self-care.
Yeah, I would definitely imagine that absolutely helps. I know the phone thing can be so hard sometimes to practice going without it. So I think that's a really wonderful tip. I was curious also if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit. You're the founder of A Voice at the Table, which I think is a really important part of our campus's like journalism community. And I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how that has been for you, how you found that, and how you're feeling about that as you kind of approach like the future and graduation.
Yeah, so yeah, I started a voice at the table. I was like a sophomore at the time, so I didn't really think nothing of it. I didn't think it would take off or like that mean people would pay attention to it. But I was really happy with the impact that it's making and like how it's able to like kind of connect through like all parts of the campus, not just like one group or the other. Like you see a lot of like opinions and stuff and like feedback from like all kinds of students, which is what I wanted. And I just wanted to create a space where if you don't feel comfortable speaking up in like certain places, like in classrooms or anything where like the spotlight might just be drawn at you, you can easily just like, write a quick article or like share your opinion or something and have that platform to like speak up on what's important to you and also have that like safety and privacy that you deserve. So I'm just really glad that happened, and I'm hoping that like more groups such as that can come out of Westchester and be able to continue to like make the impact of change on campus.
That is so cool. That's really cool. I also really appreciated your emphasis there on talking about, protecting the anonymity and privacy of folks in particular, because I think especially in an institution that is predominantly white, but also, predominantly heterosexual, predominantly there's a lot of masculinity in our institution. We find that sometimes folks who hold those historically oppressed or historically marginalized identities struggle to kind of come forward and put themselves in the spotlight. So I appreciated that you sort of elucidated that. I think that's really cool. Definitely want to remind folks that if they'd like, they can put questions in the chat. They can also come on camera if they feel so inclined and share their questions out loud. Um, if it's all right with you, I will ask another question. I'm curious if you could talk to me a little bit about how your activism has been shaped by your experience at Westchester. If you feel like it's been a positive experience, if it's been an experience that's really brought a lot of growth, I'm just sort of curious to hear.
I would say with that, it's probably both positive and negative. Because of course you're dealing with a lot of students who have like their own personal views. So there have been times where like a voice at the table or other organizations I'm a part of receive negative feedback from students. And it could be really depressing, especially most of that is through social media. So it's none of that is to your face. So it can be like really frustrating and stuff. And then also having to hold that standard of like, okay, like people are watching and stuff. So they're watching how I'm going to react and like how I talk back. So I also like learned a lot from that, like how to handle yourself, how to handle negative feedback from like people with different views that are trying to spit hate onto you and negativity, how to handle that in a positive way, and also like don't lose your character over that. So I feel like that's really important. Also, just learning how to work with like different people. Like I worked with Najee who like opened me up to like so many different issues and viewpoints that needed to be expressed that I probably wouldn't have learned if she hadn't joined AVAT. So I just wanted to shout her out real quick, but like just being open to like continuing to like work with like new people and stuff and being open to be educated, that's what it's taught me a lot. So just, this is not like the final stop. So just like continuing to like grow and stuff, especially as I go to like different places and different spaces and stuff and meet like different people.
That's great. I see a couple of folks have turned their cameras on. So if you have questions, I'm going to mute myself and you can go ahead and ask those questions.
Hi. Can everyone hear me? Okay, cool. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really enjoyed hearing about your experience. And I wanted to know this newfound voice that you've developed throughout your collegiate career, how do you plan on taking it with you and in what ways? At post-graduation, I mean.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to grad school in the fall. So there I'm gonna well, being majoring in social work is so easy to have those different like organizations and like different opportunities to like reach out to. So they're kind of like there in front of me. But I'll be in the Philadelphia area, so I'm hoping to like connect with different groups and organizations because I know there's going to be a lot more things to speak on, especially this summer and this upcoming year, because we can't just ignore everything that happened before, just because it's a new year. So I'm looking forward to connecting with different students and stuff, and just putting myself outside of my comfort zone. Um, I feel like that's more important. That's the most important. So like being able to like continue to like speak up and like raise my voice on stuff that's important because I will find people who agree with me and stuff, and I will also find people who can expose me to much more. So just like continuing to network overall.
Hi, Najah. Thank you so much again for your presentation and sharing with us today. I'm curious, as a current student, if you would offer us sort of your assessment of what is the current state, or how do you see sort of social justice issues broadly defined? How is it looking on campus, even though we're not on campus? And so whether that's within the context of gender justice or racial justice or justice for the queer community, what is your sense of sort of how those social justice topics are, what do they look like and feel like on our campus?
I would definitely say for this year, like I could definitely see more students that are starting to like speak up, especially the younger students, like their freshmen and sophomores. I never saw that when I first came to Westchester. It was mostly like juniors and seniors who were like more seasoned and like knew a lot more about the campus. But I actually like met like a lot of freshmen and sophomores such as Nani and people who are already on boards for like Black Student Union and like different organizations such as those who are like starting the impact to change. So I'm very happy to see that it's starting like younger and stuff. And I think that has something to do with everything that's going outside of Westchester and everything that happened in the summer. So I'm just hoping that, we keep continuing to like create like different spaces and different conferences such as this one that like students can like speak on and like spread awareness. So I would say is definitely start like Westchester is definitely starting to hear us, which is good. And I think they're feeling more pressure to speak on certain issues and stuff, which they should. So I'm really excited to see what's to come from like these like students and stuff who are stepping into like leaders of like speaking up.
Thanks so much for those really thoughtful answers. I appreciate it. We have another question in the chat that I'll read out for you. So post-pandemic, how do you see activism at WCU changing? And what advice might you give to the next round of activists at Westchester when everyone returns, ideally, to campus in person in the fall?
Let me see. That's a good question. I definitely see more of like the social media use post pandemic because that's all we had currently. We really had nothing in person. But I see people taking strides to still continue to make a change and doing it the best way they can. We still had like protests and stuff, the one that happened last summer on campus, and still continuing to like branch out and like really make sure their voice is heard, especially at Westchester. Just because we're virtual doesn't mean we take a break from speaking on what's important. So I would say for advice, I would say definitely have patience. Um, because the pandemic, like some people, I think they forget the pandemic is still going on regardless if the vaccine is out or not. So you will have that, probably have that issue where people don't want to wear masks. Everything with the past election, there's still people who have that kind of hate message in their head that might feel bold enough to like speak upon it in person. So definitely have patience, make yourself heard, and just continuing to like speak up and speak to like the right people, continue reaching out to the president, different staff members and like mentors that you have that can help get your message out there. I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Hey, I think I'm back. There we go. Yeah, that was a great answer, and I appreciated that so much. That sort of commitment to just tenacity and continuing to sort of do the work, even if we're separate and navigating the ideally end of the pandemic for sure. I had another question for you. And I apologize because this might be putting you a little bit on the spot, but you mentioned social media, and I was curious if there are any social media folks that you think are really vital for young activists and young students in general to sort of follow if you find them to be interesting, useful, and helpful. I'm always looking for recommendations. But I apologize. I know sometimes it's hard to think of like who are your top 5 Instagram faves on the spot. So you can feel free to take your time with this question too.
Yeah, I'm like looking right now because I am like following like a lot, but I would say I could just put their ads in the chat, but I would say one is the fit activist. So he's a past student that went here at Elliott. Most people should know him, but like he's like very open with posting about like social justice issues, regardless if it's like race, sexuality, transphobia, everything, everything. He talks about all of it. So I would say like probably a lot of students here, they do have their own pages where they're constantly promoting like social justice and like speaking on like current events that are important. So I can just put their ads in the chat as I find them. But he was like the first person I thought of because he's actually an alumni that's still like continuing to like speak up and still stay connected to Westchester, which is great.
That's so cool. I love it. Yeah. And if you have other suggestions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I'm happy to also share them out via email after we close up here today. We have another question in the chat that kind of circles back to the question around like the advice that you offered for activists when we have folks returning to campus. The question is, what advice do you have for folks to identify mentors and a supportive community in doing activist work at Westchester? So yeah, if you have any advice for finding your mentors or your community here, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I would definitely say for me it was like going to like different like organizations such as like the Dali Multicultural Center. So that building is actually in Sykes. So like that's where like mostly like most people you'll find that can help you hangs out there. Definitely different clubs like Saga, um, different there it's like blank in my head now, but like different organizations such as like Black Men United, NAACP, different organizations and centers that can like help you, such as those, with the right people who will like pretty much have the same vision as you, might be a little different, but they will help you build on and get you to like the right people that can help you. Also, when I started A Voice at the Table, I reached out to Dr. Tracy Robinson, and she was a big part of starting that column and like actually got me connected to like so many different people. That's how I got connected to the quad. But reaching out to people such as those, I think she's in the diversity center for Westchester. But yeah, different like contacts such as those. Even if it's just like a simple email and she gives you some like a heads up on like someone else who can help you, can make like a great impact. So definitely don't be afraid to like reach out to like different people you meet.
That's fantastic advice. I appreciate that. I will share. I'm a little older than you, but I will say that I wish that I'd gotten some of that advice when I was an undergraduate student myself, because I was a little too shy to send emails sometimes. However, now I've learned to be very annoying and email often and frequently. Yeah, just again, as a reminder to folks, if you'd like, you can feel free to unmute yourself, come on camera and ask a question, or you can stick the question in the chat if you'd rather have me read it out. I wanted to ask another question. I think that this has been really just such an impactful presentation, but also a really great conversation about the climate at Westchester in particular. I was curious if you could share a little bit, just thinking about your experience, not only as a columnist at the Quad, but like just in general with the whole state of journalism being kind of a weird thing in this day and age. Like there's a lot of belief that journalism is going away or moving to other platforms. And I was curious how you found that experience and what ways maybe you adapted to be more accessible to students who are on campus now.
Yeah, so definitely in the beginning, it was like kind of tricky. Well, no, it's actually pretty much easier because, we were on campus, it was easy just to pick up a newspaper that was hanging around and stuff. So definitely throughout the way, like up until now, we had to like develop ways to continue reaching out to students. It does help that like we're on the Quad's website. So like it's just easy, to click on the link and just quickly read it because everyone's on their phone anyways. But like with journalism, it did require like a little twist. So we did involve like different podcasts, definitely trying to get different writers and stuff to like for the articles and like raising awareness on issues and also just like being more present on social media because that's where we do get most of our like feedback and everything, so we definitely had to like incorporate those aspects and also just on journalism in general. A lot of people will try to censor you and like what you write, so it's just trying still going in with the same goal that you had in the beginning and like being aware of like who's going to try to like stop you, who's going to like try to like make small edits and stuff, and just making that like promise to like students and stuff like, hey, this is what we write about. We're very brutal and honest, and it's because it's coming from the students, and like that's what they want to hear, and that's what should be promoted to campus.
Thank you so much for that answer. I really appreciated, in particular, your emphasis on the idea of censorship and editing. I think it's really important for folks to really advocate for their points of view to be heard. So I'm really grateful to hear that that's work that you've been doing. I'm curious if you could share if there were any strategies that you've sort of employed in the past to do that. To do that self advocacy for like making sure that no, the intended words end up on the page or the website or the podcast or what have you.
I think it just requires like a lot of communication. And normally, when people like read an article and they say, "Oh, we probably shouldn't say that," they're not fully understanding where the writer was coming from and what the message means. Like it may be brutal, it may be honest, but there's a reason why they're writing it, and it comes from their own experience that shouldn't be sheltered or like censored to make other people feel uncomfortable when they felt uncomfortable themselves. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Um, I was curious also, you mentioned kind of the idea of comfortability, and I feel like that's something that we've seen kind of be addressed a lot, in particular in this last year or so, is really understanding the difference between being comfortable and being uncomfortable and being safe versus being unsafe and kind of looking at that dichotomy. And I was curious if you could kind of just speak a little bit about how one might determine that sort of like when is it comfortable or uncomfortable to speak out versus when is it safe or unsafe to speak out?
I think like far as the first part of it, feeling safe and unsafe, um, you pretty much know when you're in an environment where people have pretty much have like the same opinion or vision as you. So if you feel you're in a classroom and like, I'm just gonna be honest, like you see like a lot of like students who have like disagreements and stuff with you, or like don't often have the same views as you. That's definitely an example of like safe versus unsafe. Like yes, it's important to speak up, but also being like socially aware of like who's around you, being aware of like that staff member is going to make sure that you're safe and that your voice is heard and not other students are speaking over you or like threatening you. um and then also with uncomfortable and comfortable, just knowing if you're in like a setting such as this or like in a conference or something, and what you have to say might make people feel uncomfortable. Just know that like it took a lot of courage for you to go up there and say your story and what you're advocating for. So it shouldn't, if it makes them feel uncomfortable, just know that your message is getting through to them, because they could kind of see like where you're coming from and like your experience and stuff. So you want people to feel that vulnerability that you felt.
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point. I think both the points that you made there were really excellent. And I think that you raised like a really valid sort of like thing that we often need to keep in mind, that sometimes discomfort and uncomfortability can be a goal. Like we should not always be so comfortable. If we are engaging in social change work, we must sometimes embrace that uncomfortability. We must sometimes feel as if we are maybe not doing or saying the right things so that we can learn and we can grow. Um, I know that I want to be mindful of time. We have just a little bit left here together today. So, oh, and we have another question in chat, so I'll go ahead and read that. So this question asks, how do you think your work as an activist will influence future endeavors? What do you plan on going to graduate school for, and what influenced that decision?
Yeah, so I hope that what I started at Westchester continues. Regardless if like someone just remembers one article that someone wrote in the voice at the table, or like just like one word I said to someone gets through to someone, like that's like more than enough. I hope that I can continue to encourage students at Westchester to speak up and to like build their own spaces. um, so I plan on getting my master's in social work. I've always been interested in like helping people and advocating for people. So social work really stood out to me. I did go into Westchester in the health department field, but I wasn't really my interest anymore. So I did go to social work and I learned so much. You learn so much about yourself and like what you're willing to do for other people and like your personal views on everything. So it did like open me up and make me more of like an open book to other people. And you also, it just really humbles you. I think that's like my favorite part about it. Like you get to see how so many people are living, their experiences and stuff, and it just humbles you a lot. And like we are like kind of like social workers are like undervalued or underpaid, whatever people say, but we do a lot of work. So that's what continues to like encourage me to keep going in the social work career, and continue to like help people and spread awareness.
That's great. I'm so excited to hear about your future plans. If you are comfortable sharing, would you mind talking about what you're hoping to do once you finish graduate school, once you've completed that degree in social work? Like, is there a dream job or a dream trajectory for the future?
Yeah, so I want to be a school social worker, mainly in like middle school and like high schools, because I feel that's when it starts. That's where you see a lot of kids be like, oh, my teacher or my counselor told me I couldn't go to college, or like I couldn't amount to this or do that. So definitely there, like especially when it comes to like mental health, which is often like pushed back with like the younger generation and stuff, because a lot of people don't think they know what depression or anxiety or what that stuff means. is definitely important. So I definitely want to get into like that field and definitely help with that generation and help them like grow into like the people who's going to be running our country one day, who's going to be voting and like taking on all these roles. So it's important that we help develop them as early as we can.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think it also connects very well to a point um, that was made at the opening session this morning about it was talking specifically about sex education for young children, but it was also talking kind of about how like we begin those interventions when folks are very young. So if we wait until folks get to college to expose them to ideas around like social justice, around oppression, around identity, it makes it so much harder for them to sort of unlearn that as they grow. But I definitely was curious if you could answer one more question for me. So in some of our sessions today, we've had folks talking about setting boundaries and how that can be kind of challenging, especially you'd mentioned earlier that attachment to our phones that we all have. I feel like the phone is like both the maker and the breaker of many boundaries for some folks. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how you go about setting those boundaries for yourself and if there are any sort of like boundary setting goals that you have for yourself in the future.
Yeah, that's like definitely something I'm still learning with boundaries and stuff. Just like learning what you feel comfortable doing, what you don't, is very important because it goes into like mental health and stuff. Just like pretty much knowing like if this is gonna like drain you or like if you really don't want to say yes to this, you don't have to say yes. So definitely just setting boundaries with stuff that's going to affect your personal life and how you're going to feel after this setting or whatever you just spoke on. How's that going to make you feel? It just I would say like with setting boundaries is put yourself first and put whatever how you feel in yourself like first. I would say that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I recall very vividly earlier in the conversation you had talked about how like you can't water a plant from an empty pot, and I think that that's a really important piece to sort of hold dear as we navigate all of this. So that's really wonderful advice. Thank you so much. I want to offer one last time if any other folks have questions or comments they'd like to share before we close out the session for today. I'll just give folks a couple of minutes if they would like. I'm seeing some awesome support in the chat, but not so many questions. So I think we can probably go ahead and close out for this evening. I want to say thank you so very much to Najah for your presentation and for your uh, awesome Q&A that we had here. I think it made for a really awesome conversation. We're going to go ahead and close out the session in a moment. So thank you again for joining us. To our participants, we want to thank you for your time, your energy, and your commitment to gender justice. You'll receive an evaluation following this session by email, so we encourage you to please consider filling it out. And we're going to go ahead and offer up this QR code if you need to record your attendance at today's session for any reason. We hope that you'll join us for our final session of today, which is meditation with Abhasana, and our other sessions that are tomorrow. Thank you so much again for attending, and if you'd like to learn more, please feel free to visit our conference hub, which has been shared in the chat. So thank you all so very much, and we hope you have an amazing day.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.